It's been a year since we've got together.
Yeah.
We've just gotten out of the hospital last year about this time. In fact, it might be almost exactly the day. This is now January 28, 1991. And we're 2 weeks into the war that I was hoping would never have to happen. And you and I have been talking about it for the last 6 months at least. So,
yeah. Well, one of the purposes of this videotape is I've had on my mind for several years, from approximately 1981, it's kind of a missing chapter of information that I have volunteered publicly prior. In other words, in talks and conferences, and I think we have a videotape on the subject of plane crashes and things of that nature. There was a great deal of work done by the priests of the Order of Melchizedek, people that are not in the order, that are just spiritually oriented, many near-death experiencers, and there was a lot of people band together with sometimes minimal information, but gave spiritual energy and so on for the purposes of well-being and cushioning tragic events, delaying precognitive events for the purposes of either having them rather miraculously not take place and make a contradiction to something that is still considered a precognition, and so on. And credit to all of them. The chapter that I have really wished to share and not been able to share was regarding a person's proper name, because very often some of the information that I talk about is of a military nature or in world events or a criminal. And people's proper names, it's not very appropriate to divulge their names for obvious reasons, as well as some very subtle spiritual reasons. And that bothers me, because I have a tendency to want to share anything and everything all the time. Well, because of the events of the last week or so in the Persian Gulf and the fact that we are at war with Iraq, it has finally come to pass. In fact, I've actually wanted to make this videotape for a couple of weeks. It's an appropriate timing to divulge the little secret chapter that was that I've had to keep secret for so long. And one of the reasons that I want to do this is to help people that are reasonably ignorant about the cause and effect relationship, or the righteousness, if you will, of this military conflict that we have in the Middle East. And I think that what I'm about to say will help people in regards to being able to see in perspective the necessity for the military intervention, the fact that other means, peace proposals, the United Nations condemnation, suggestions from all different angles and so on have failed. Have failed regarding Saddam Hussein, have failed regarding other people of authority and so on in the Middle East, and with their invasion tactics and greed and ego. So what I think I'll do is start and give you a synopsis of a story that I have shared before and information leading up to the Middle East crisis. And we tried just prior to this tape to get an exact date of the meeting that I had at the University of Connecticut in the residence of Dr. Kenneth Ring at the time. And we're assuming now that it was 1981.
right? October 12th of 1981.
Okay. There's a possibility that it was definitely October 12th. In fact, in the wee hours of the morning, so technically October 13th. We're not sure right now if it was 1980 or 82. So in other words, somewhere between those 3 years, it was one of those years, but definitely on the nighttime of October 12th, and specifically a precognition took place at exactly 3:15 in the morning of October 13th. a very rare occurrence. In fact, it had never happened to me prior to this. Let me make that a little clearer by saying from 1978 and my near-death experience, I had had several precognitions, various forms, various types. Typically, they would be roughly 30 days ahead in time, with the exception of a precognition that I had understood as soon as I recuperated and was able to think rationally from the accident that created my near-death experience. That, of course, was to have been a nuclear detonation of a malicious nature, and it was to have had taken place by August 15th of 1988. Now, as most of you know who will be watching this videotape, that event did not take place. And of course, one of the things that typically the people who will see this videotape, and of course the people of the priesthood and other walks of life and so on, have worked so hard to accomplish. So what we're going to talk about tonight is another accomplishment that had taken place that was purposely kept a little bit secret. The conversation that I was having into the wee hours of the morning was focused on the life and times of Jesus Christ. I was on a roll. I was asked a specific question by someone, I don't even recall who. There were many people in the room. And I was babbling a mile a minute, which is, I guess, is typical of me at times. And I was concentrating and enjoying, and many people were enjoying my company. So it was a usual, typical, and normal thing. It was also typical in those roundtable discussions, as we call them, that people would do additional work. They would have tape recorders on, and then if, for instance, as was the case, Dr. Kenneth Ring was there, and he was talking to the then Secretary of the International Association for Near-Death Studies office, and all-around good guy and girl Friday, Leah Andrews. They were making some arrangements for a meeting coming up in the next short while. I say that because I don't know the time frame from October... October 12th to December 17th. Yeah, that would be about 2 months. So, obviously, by what I'm about to say, it was for a meeting regarding December 17th. Well, it was typical of people to talk and sometimes interrupt with loud tones or voices, and that wouldn't have bothered me. But for some reason or no apparent reason at all, Dr. Kenneth Ring yelled across the room to Leah Andrews when she was making a phone call to set up some kind of an appointment, and he said, Leah, make that December 17th, just like that. And Leah nodded, and everything was silent. Now, what that did to me was, I'm assuming at this point, by the power of suggestion of hearing Ken Ring yell December 17th, my mind or my spiritual consciousness that was kind of, shall I say, something similar to reading the Akashic records of the life and times of Jesus Christ, suddenly became focused on worldly events of December 17th. What I experienced initially was a visualization of what would typically appear in the newspaper of the following morning on the front page. And it was as though I was looking at any major newspaper of a particular plane crash that was being advertised in the, or shown in the newspaper that took place on December 17th. So that was the initial main focus. What actually took place in a split of second out of time was my awareness of many, many very extraordinary details of this precognitive plane crash in California of a B-52 bomber, military plane.